Hi. Previously, we added state to the app component in order to control whether or not a bio section should appear. At the moment, DisplayBio is false by default, so the bio is also going to be hidden by default. But we can add some dynamic functionality to allow the user to flip this boolean in the state. That way, the bio section can reappear. So instead of a null value in the false case, let's actually have some JSX. So add a pair of parentheses. And in this false case, let's have a div. In this div, we're going to have a button element. And this button element, the text of it is going to say read more. Cool. Now, if you have your eye on the app in the browser, and as long as npm run start has been fired in the command line, create React app should have picked up the change, and now a read more button is there in the actual application. Nice. Now, when we click on this, some functionality should be triggered to set the DisplayBio boolean to true in the state. Let's add that functionality in the class with a new helper method called readMore. So up in the class, let's add a new helper method. And this method will be called readMore, and make sure it's camel cased so the M is capitalized. Within readMore, let's change this.state.DisplayBio to true. So this.state.DisplayBio is now going to be true. Now, it's tempting to write it in this way, but this is actually an example of directly modifying the component state object. In React, it's a huge bad practice to directly modify the component state. Instead of doing this, React attaches a helper method to the component called SetState, specifically for updating the values in the state object. The SetState method is used by calling this.setState, and its input is an object. The keys in this object are whatever keys we want to update in the state, and right now we have one key, which is DisplayBio. Then the value that we want this key to update to is going to be true. So let's make DisplayBio to true when readMore is fired. All right. Now, the key is making this method fire when the button is clicked. In React, we can use an OnClick property for an element that references a method to fire. And under the hood, in the React.js engine code, React will know to trigger the method when the element is actually clicked. So that goes like this: have an onClick attribute handler. So this is a property on the button element itself. And this should point to the readMore function. So onClick equals this.readMore within a pair of curly braces. All right, go ahead and save the file once you have all of this. And then in the browser, go ahead and click readMore. And the result is perhaps not what you were expecting. Instead of the bio now appearing, there's an error that says setState can't be used on an undefined object. So this error, again, is similar to what we had before. This object is undefined, and undefined.setState does not work in JavaScript, because after all, an undefined value doesn't have any methods within it. All right, let's dig into this. Rather than calling this.setState in a readMore, let's do a console.log of the this object within the readMore function. So go ahead and comment out the this.setState line for now. We'll now have a console.log of readMore this. And the second parameter is going to be the actual this object that we're looking at. All right. And now in the constructor, let's also log the component this. The idea is that we want to see if the this object matches the one for the component for the one that we have here in the readMore function. So by having a console.log of the component this, we can make the comparison. So make sure you have both of these lines. All right, if you save the file and then you open up the application logs, what you're going to find is that the component this is the app. If you expand the app component and then look at the prototype and expand it once more, you're going to find that indeed it has access to a setState function. So indeed the component has this.setState. But if you click on the button, the this object within the readMore function itself is undefined. Now the reason for this is that class methods don't have logic to create their own this object. A class method written this way is essentially a convenient way to collect various methods to fire, like a script. It's not an object or a class instance itself. Therefore, it doesn't make its own this. But in this case, we still want the setState method attached to the this object of the component to be available to a this object within the read more method. So one way to do this is to directly attach the method within the constructor to the component's this object. So rather than declaring a class method, right away within the constructor, we're going to have this.readMore is equal to a function. And then if you move the log within here, as well as the this.setState, what you're going to find is that now when you try a button click, when you do the read more this, indeed it matches the app this. Cool. That definitely worked. By attaching the method directly on the this object within the constructor, it has access to the app component's this object. But think of a scenario where we have 5 or even 10 more of these methods for the component. Would we want to write each of these methods within the constructor every time? Probably not. It's much more cleaner to have this at the class level. So let's remove this, put the code of read more back within the class method, and explore an alternative. So the challenge is that we still want the method to have access to the this object of the component. Luckily in JavaScript, we have a special .bind method for methods that allow us to pass the this object from one object to another. That way, we can bind the this object of the component itself to the helper method, and it goes like this. We'll call this.readMore.bind this. Now this actually produces a new function that is the result of creating a function that has the this object from the component bound to this readMore function. So we need to now set this.readMore to that result. All right, if you save this and then uncomment this.setState, you can also leave in the console.log, head back to the actual application, and then click read more now. And what you're going to find is that the actual bio displays on the application and expands. Woohoo! So we also get the log again that the this object within read more is identical to the app component's this. Nice. Now that this bio has expanded, let's make sure that we can collapse it as well. In this expanded version of the state, we're going to add a button that does the opposite of read more. It's going to let the user make the application show less. So let's add a new button, div, after the final paragraph within the true case of this.state.DisplayBio. So this is going to be a button that says show less. And now we can add a helper method that does show less, and it essentially does the opposite. It's going to call this.setState and make DisplayBio now false. However, rather than having pretty much the same code over again between the two methods, let's make a new method called toggle DisplayBio. And what toggle DisplayBio will do is set the state of DisplayBio to its opposite value, whatever it currently may be. So in here, we can call this.setState. It's going to change the value of DisplayBio and make it the opposite of this.state.DisplayBio using the bang operator. So if DisplayBio is currently false, this will flip it to true. If it's true, it's going to flip it to false. All right. Now we can get rid of read more and show less. And we want to make sure that toggle DisplayBio has access to the this object. So toggle DisplayBio is going to be equal to this.toggleDisplayBio.bind this. And now the show less button is going to fire that toggle DisplayBio function when it's clicked. And likewise, on a click of read more, it will also fire the toggle DisplayBio method. So make sure to have both of those changes, as well as the bind of this to toggle.DisplayBio. Go ahead and save. And in the application now, you can click read more. And likewise, you can click show less, and it does the opposite. We expand and collapse the bio section. Cool. So that overall wraps up the setState method and how to properly update the state in the component. Remember, it's a rule to never modify the state directly within React. You should call setState to handle situations where you want values in the state to change, and you should always supply new objects as the values to replace the current values in the state. To reinforce this rule, and more importantly, to understand why this rule exists in the first place, let's explore what is going on with setState under the hood in the next one. If you enjoyed this content, head to davidtkatz.com. There, you'll find links to full courses, as well as to reach out and connect with me. For React and Redux in particular, you'll want to check out udemy.com/React Redux Bootcamp. This is a course I made to help you learn React and Redux the right way and to turn you into React and Redux developer. Okay, see you in the next one.